SciManDan tried to refute my Comet argument, and it didn't go well. Today, we're exposing the rescue devices he used and why comets still scream young solar system. Let's dive in. Okay, here we go. I'm excited for this one. We love refuting critics here on Standing for Truth. And so before we get into this detailed debunk of SciManDan, a quick promo. Matt and I, earlier today, we recorded episode 1 of our new Genesis Revealed Defending Biblical Origins series. This is a must-watch. This series features none other than Dr. Dino, and episode 1 focused on the age of the earth. We were comprehensive. It was a lot of fun, and you guys definitely don't want to miss this series. Now, this series in its entirety is a Patreon only series. And so please consider supporting the ministry for as little as $1 a month. You can become a ministry supporter and gain access to this series that will leave no stone unturned, and it will prove even further why it is a great time to be a biblical creationist. We are planning on putting out hopefully an episode every couple weeks, and again, we are going to be comprehensive. This episode should be available soon, sometime in the next day or two on Patreon, as soon as we get it edited and working smoothly. Okay, refuting SciManDan part 1. He put out a video titled How to Misinterpret Everything, based on a video clip that I took from the Biblical Creation seminar that we did that went for about 4 hours. And he presented a lot of rescue devices in response to what I presented, but what I want to do is tackle each of his points one by one. And so in that video clip, I discussed pieces of evidence such as how comets, the fact that they move around the solar system, they travel past the sun in an elliptical path, and every time they move past the sun, they lose a lot of their material, their icy material, and so this puts shelf lives, you could say, on comets. They can't last for billions of years. Max, you're looking at roughly 10,000 years for comets. I discussed the decaying magnetic field. I discussed preserved biomaterial in dinosaur fossils. I presented on the C14 in diamonds and coal and fossils where it shouldn't be if those samples really are billions of years old. I discussed the helium and zircon crystals that we find, and there's far too much helium. There's an abundance of helium that shouldn't be there. Zircon crystals really are billions of years old. But I want to take each point one at a time. I have an associated article to go with each video, and therefore this will be a series of about 5 videos most likely. That way we can leave no stone unturned on the issue. If you want to see the article that's associated with this one, Kuiper Belt and Oort Cloud, the 2 rescue devices that SciManDan invokes in part 1, the comet problem that SciManDan and other proponents of evolution can't solve. It's not 110% SciManDan's fault. It's because the arguments or rescue devices that SciManDan is taking from other apologists or guardians of deep time evolution or common descent, they don't have good responses to these arguments, these incredible pieces of evidence that powerfully confirm biblical origins. There are just not very good responses or objections out there. And so SciManDan's simply working with what he's got. So again, it's not entirely his fault. And so let's get into his video and let's hear the arguments and points directly from him. and then we will respond in detail. And so here's his video, how to misinterpret everything about science, which he's referring to me. Apparently I'm misinterpreting everything about science. And so let's see if his arguments work in countering that which I have presented. Here we go.
When people often suggest that they've got evidence to prove that the Earth is not billions of years old, I often raise my eyebrows. That's because it never turns out to be evidence that the Earth is not billions of years old. It ends up...
Well, in his opinion, it doesn't turn out to be evidence for why the Earth is not billions of years old, but we can really tell just how powerful this evidence is when we look to see what our critics, what the skeptics are saying in response, and we can see that the best they have to offer are rescue devices, and for the most part, already debunked talking points, as we are going to see in specifically the section on helium and zircon crystals. We recently did a 3-hour seminar with Dr. Andrew Snelling, and we dismantled all of your best possible criticisms or objections thrown at arguments that do confirm a young Earth, like C14 and diamonds and helium and zircon crystals and so on and so forth. And so in his opinion, they're not convincing, but when the evidence is weighed and examined in an objective manner, there's only one conclusion you can make: that the Earth is young, that you are not related to banana plants and strawberries. And it's funny because the argument from Comets, although powerful and fascinating, is not a hill that I would die on. Okay, if I'm really going to present an argument that, based on what I've seen, there's really no way to address, like the Y chromosome dissimilarity or mutation rates, overall genetic diversity, DNA function, for example, mutually interdependent systems, C14 in diamonds, the helium argument, radio halos. Comets at this point have not been adequately addressed. The responses are weak, as we're going to see. But again, it's not a point that I would, it's not a hill that I would die on, but yet it's still interesting that even on this argument that we're going to deal with Comets, even on this point, which doesn't make or break the debate by any means, right? They still don't have good responses, as we're going to see.
Being a scientific fact that they've either misunderstood, misinterpreted, or just lied about.
Or perhaps the evolutionists misunderstand, misinterpret, or just lie about what's being said. So a lot of this is opinion and assertion based.
So when a popular creationist YouTube channel released a video with evidence that changes everything.
I will say, though, I do enjoy SciManDan's videos. He is fun to respond to. His videos and arguments are fun to analyze. And so for that, credit where credit is due. Dan, I'm looking forward to getting into the entirety of this video. Again, it's close to 10 minutes, but I think part 1 is going to be about 3 or 4 minutes, because that's just the Comets section.
Guess what I did? I raised my eyebrows.
Hey, at least we got his eyebrows raised. So that's something.
Hello all and welcome along to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, SciManDan. Thanks very much for joining me. Right, on with today's video then, which comes from Standing for Truth. Now, Donny's got some guests on his show, and he starts to talk about comets. Let's see where this goes, shall we?
Incredible data. Technically, this is a clip we took from a biblical creation seminar that we did last month, I think it was. We went for 4 hours. We were comprehensive, and we demonstrated the truth of young Earth creation from both the Bible and Scripture. We also countered the best so-called arguments for evolution and showed exactly why separate ancestry is true. So this is a clip from that. You can watch the clip, and you can also watch the entire seminar. And of course, you can watch SciManDan's response to this particular section of the video. So comets is an interesting one. We know that comets can't last for very long. A comet is made up of ice and dirt. That's its material. And they actually orbit the sun in an elliptical path. Now, as comets actually get closer to the sun, the icy material gets blasted out into space. So comets are actually losing their material slowly over time. That means they're getting smaller and smaller. And because they're losing mass, this is interesting, we can actually calculate the rate as to which these comets are being depleted. And the data strongly indicates that comets can't last millions of years old, and they actually limit the age of the solar system. So before SciManDan responds, it's a simple argument, an argument anybody can understand. It makes sense. It works in the young Earth model based on the amount of material that a comet loses over time. You can calculate that or run it back, and you can see that comets, as we know, simply can't last millions to billions of years old. Therefore, that is a point on the side of a young Earth. Now, how do the critics respond? What do they appeal to? And let's see if that which they appeal to save the day for the deep time paradigm, let's see if it works and stands up under scrutiny. I'm curious to see what SciManDan presents. Is it testable? Is it observable? It is empirical based? Is it something that's actually based in reality and science? Or is it more of his evolutionary philosophy? I guess we'll have to see.
That's fine. Comets do lose ice and dust when they get close to the sun. That's literally why they have tails. No argument there. Where he goes...
Okay, so he agrees with the facts. He agrees with the data that they're losing icy material as they move around the sun. Okay. Naturally, this is going to put shelf lives on them and limit the age of comets. Okay, so let's see his next response.
Wrong is by claiming that the comets we see now are the same comets that have been orbiting the solar system since the beginning of the solar system.
Now, isn't that an assertion that these are not the same comets that have been orbiting as the same comets at the beginning of the solar system? So he believes that they're not, but let's see if he can demonstrate that.
They obviously aren't.
He says they obviously aren't. That's an assertion. Well, these are obviously not the original comets. And so we can have comets that have been moving in over millions and billions of years. But is this something that he can actually demonstrate? Let's see.
The solar system has massive reservoirs of fresh comets.
So he says the solar system has massive reservoirs of fresh comets. Okay, let's see if that's something that can be demonstrated. So far, this is what he believes, capital B. These are assertions. This is his story. This is evolutionary philosophy. I'm looking for science. Let's see.
The Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud.
Okay, the Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud. He's appealing to these. Let's see.
Constantly sending new comets inwards.
Are they actually constantly sending new comets inwards? The Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud. He's definitely not demonstrating it.
It's a conveyor belt, not a one-time supply.
So he says it's a conveyor belt and not a one-time supply. Okay. These are all assertions. These are all claims. He's not really backing anything up yet, is he?
Yes, individual comets don't last forever.
Okay. Individual comets don't last forever. As a matter of fact, they can last max 10,000 years. But then he's asserting or claiming that due to the Oort Cloud and the Kuiper Belt, they're supplying fresh new comets. And so individual comets are not lasting long. But thankfully, according to the Oort Cloud and the Kuiper Belt, new comets can make their way into the solar system like a conveyor belt, like he's saying. And so this is a system that he claims works well. But again, is it demonstrable? Is this scientific or just evolutionary philosophy?
But the supply does.
Because if the solar system works, okay, so all of that comprise claims, assertions, and evolutionary philosophy. We'll get into more detail once he's done here in this section. I've got some slides and visuals to help people understand even further why SciManDan's response to my point on comets severely lacks. For billions of years old, and the universe really were 14 billion years, comets would have all depleted away. The fact that they're there tells us that the solar system is young.
As I said, we know the solar system has huge comet reservoirs, and they contain millions.
So we know the Kuiper Belt exists. We don't know the Oort Cloud exists. That's never been observed. Even those in the conventional literature admit to this. Okay. But he also asserted, let's go back there a little bit. He asserted See, these kinds of assertions wouldn't work in a debate, as people have seen. We call out the opposition on their assertions. Solar system is young.
As I said, we know the solar system has huge comet reservoirs.
So he says, we know our solar system has huge comet reservoirs. We do? I'd like him to prove that, to demonstrate that.
And they contain millions to trillions.
And he says they contain millions to trillions. Well, the Oort Cloud, which has never been observed, that's their lowercase g god, apparently. Oort Cloud can save the day. So no, we don't know that. Kuiper Belt's interesting because it is real. We know it exists, but does it actually, can it supply, and does it have millions and trillions of comets as acting as a hidden reservoir, basically, to supply the solar system with new comets to counterbalance the depleting ones
of icy bodies. These get nudged inward over.
So he says these get nudged inward. So these assertions and claims and storytelling might be convincing to those that are already so invested in the deep time story, like those in his comment section that are listening to him speak. But again, evolutionary storytelling is not actually going to work. It's not effective. It's not a sophisticated response to the comets challenge.
With time, and that gives us a steady supply of new comets. So the present.
It does. So the Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud, according to SciManDan, gives us a steady supply of new comets. Is that true? Is he demonstrating it, or is he just making assertions and claims and giving us little bits and pieces of his evolutionary story?
The presence of comets today isn't evidence of a young solar system.
Actually, according to my point and your response, yes, it is, because he didn't debunk anything. Assertions and claims and evolutionary philosophy is not an effective counter to this point that logically, yes, he's admitted that clearly comets, individual comets, have a lifespan. That lifespan is 10,000 years or less. And then he asserts and claims that, well, these are not the same comets that have been orbiting, that have been in existence since the evolution, the cosmological evolution of the solar system billions of years ago. And that we got the Kuiper Belt and Oort Cloud that supplies like a conveyor belt. It's a supplier of new icy bodies. That's the claim. That's the story. It hasn't been demonstrated. And I'll further prove that.
It's evidence that the supply line works.
Does the supply line work, though? Does the supply line exist for comets? That we're going to see even in the Kuiper Belt. There's not really any good evidence for that. Oort Cloud hasn't been observed. You can just discard that as evolutionary fairy tale. Okay. And so again, I think people can see that these are assertions and claims. And why I'm pausing the video is because we always need to call out the evolutionists when they make a claim and an assertion, especially when it's not substantiated. It's okay to make an assertion and claim and then show that this is scientific. This is based in reality. Here's my assertion. Here's the evidence. Now refute it. But if it's just an assertion but no evidence, well, there's not much to go by, because it's like, okay, that's a cute story, but it's not science. Another really good one is the decaying. Okay, so there we go, roughly between 2 and 3 minutes in. So guys, you can tell this is going to be a fun series. The decaying magnetic field is going to be the next one, and it doesn't get any better for our good friend SciManDan. And of course, we do appreciate the engagement and interaction. And perhaps one day we can have a one-on-one conversation on this issue. So here we go. We heard the entirety of his argument. We're not taking anything out of context. I played it, and we know what his response is. We know what his rescue devices are. And let me prove even further why that's exactly what this is. So Kuiper Belt, Oort Cloud, rescue devices. Okay, let's have some fun with this. Here's a summary of what we just heard. SciManDan appeals to the Oort Cloud and the Kuiper Belt as if they are observational facts. But the Oort Cloud has never been detected, and the Kuiper Belt is known to be underpopulated. You can see this directly in the conventional literature on this issue by 2 or 3 orders of magnitude. In other words, the long age model needs invisible reservoirs. This is evolutionary philosophy that don't exist and visible reservoirs that are far too small. See, and I'm doing this in a series because I've responded to SciManDan in the past. For example, I took his Adam and Eve video critique from roughly 2 years ago, and I responded to the whole thing. I think my response was just about an hour, maybe a little bit more. And so this will make it more digestible. If people are wondering, why don't you just respond to the whole thing? Well, I want to keep these responses 15 to maybe 30 minutes roughly, okay? And that way they're digestible, and I'm doing it as a favor to our good friend SciManDan, because if he ever does respond, because I'd be curious how he responds to these counters and me pointing out the fact that all he's really got is claims and assertions in the video, okay, is this will give him the opportunity to have shorter videos to possibly respond to defend his belief in not only common descent, but in terms of this video, a young Earth. In other words, the long-age model needs invisible reservoirs that don't exist, invisible reservoirs that are far too small. See, Oort Cloud, it's invisible, can't see it, doesn't exist. Okay, demonstrate that it exists. It's just a belief, capital B. And visible reservoirs like the Kuiper Belt that are far too small. So no, there's no counterbalance. Comets look young because they are young. Very simple. As a young Earth creationist, we don't have to invoke rescue devices because the data works. The data speaks for itself. And no amount of evolutionary philosophy is going to save the day for SciManDan. The Oort Cloud, never observed. The Kuiper Belt does not solve the problem of short period comets. There's no counterbalance. There's even evidence that we're not dealing with comets when it comes to the Kuiper Belt. This is a textbook rescue device. This is why we wrote a book years and years ago, the Rescue Device Handbook, because critics like SciManDan, guardians of common descent and deep time, they may not always be good at providing sophisticated counters or convincing responses, but they are really good at inventing rescue devices, really far-fetched rescue devices. They're invented because comets disprove deep time. Remember, science is not about proving things, but we can take a model, take a hypothesis. And I think it was Einstein that said you could have hundreds to thousands of observations and pieces of evidence that are working in your model's favor. All it takes is one experiment or line of evidence or observation that precludes the model from being true. Comets decay rapidly, too fragile to survive millions of years. Short period comets burn out in about 10,000 years. Where's the billions of years? Oort Cloud, rescue device never observed, no telescope to observe that. Prove me wrong, Dan. And this is why it's important to respond to critics and not ignore the critics, because we want to show viewers, especially those on the fence, that yes, we have counters to what the critics are saying. If we don't ever respond to critics, if we just let the critics to walk all over us as young Earth creationists, then those that don't really know this topic, those that are not informed or equipped to take on the critics, they're going to think that SciManDan has really strong arguments here. Ooh, the Oort Cloud supplies fresh comets. But when we do a response video, we point out that no, that Oort Cloud is an evolutionary mental invention. And so it's important to defend our arguments. It also helps to refine our positions, to refine our arguments and reformulate them if a critic actually puts forth a good argument. Because over the years of doing debates, I've done over 100 formal debates and hundreds of impromptu discussions and debates due to all the open mics that we've hosted and all the challenges that we've done over the years. And so I've seen, for the most part, the best that the critics have to offer, and what those arguments, criticisms, challenges, and objections have done. They've actually helped me to refine my position, to discard arguments that don't really work, to not focus too much on agnostic pieces of evidence, and really hold the evolutionist feet to the fire on the discriminating points, the differentiating lines of evidence that can best be explained by creation and that pose a real challenge or problem to evolution. Oort Cloud, invented, mental invention to explain away the young comet problem. And it doesn't matter how many evolutionists repeat in videos, discussions, debates, articles, this mental invention that's never been observed. It doesn't matter how many times they repeat it. It doesn't make it true. Not based on evidence, but it's a necessity. Kuiper Belt, insufficient, real, but too few objects. Wrong size distribution, cannot supply comets at required rate, Young solar system fits the data. The most parsimonious explanation is that the solar system is young because we don't require any far-fetched rescue mechanisms like the Oort cloud, which again is not even observed. Why should we as creationists accept that there's an Oort cloud out there that's supplying fresh comets? Dan, give us good reasons, creationists. Give us informed creationists good reasons for us to say, oh, the Oort cloud, yeah, it must exist. Show me a picture. Show me the evidence. Comets look young because they are young. No invisible reservoirs required. The Oort cloud is entirely theoretical. Zero observations. No telescope, including Hubble, James Webb Space Telescope, that's JWST, Pan-STARRS, Gaia, or any deep survey instrument has ever detected a single Oort cloud object. There is no direct observational evidence for what? The cloud itself, the trillions, you heard Dan himself, trillions of bodies, icy bodies. It's trillions of bodies. No, where? Its dynamics, its formation. He didn't provide any of this. So in a follow-up video, I want you, SciManDan, show me direct empirical observational evidence for what? The cloud itself, its trillions of bodies, its dynamics, its formation, its composition, and its gravitational influence. I want to see that. The Oort cloud exists only because deep time cosmology cannot explain why comets still exist. That's what we mean by rescue device. Well, I got to rescue the deep time paradigm because this piece of evidence, one of over 100 easily, that actually works in favor of the young Earth model and acts as powerful evidence against the deep time model. Okay, rather than tapping out, they need something to rescue the paradigm. It was invented to preserve the billions of years model. That is the definition of a rescue device. Even secular astrophysicists acknowledge that the Kuiper Belt is far too underpopulated by at least 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. I find it funny. We've had Dr. Jason Lisle, a PhD astrophysicist who knows this topic extremely well. We've had him on at least a couple times, both times for a couple hours each. So we've got about 3.5 to 4 hours worth of content with a PhD astrophysicist. And SciManDan repeats these rescue devices as if we haven't already examined them, as if we've just never heard, oh, the Oort cloud, oh, the Kuiper Belt. Yeah, we're aware. Okay. So the better thing for someone like SciManDan to do is say, well, here's the Oort cloud, here's the Kuiper Belt, here's how creationists might respond, and here's how you counter their response. That would be him being comprehensive by at least 2 to 3 orders of magnitude to supply the short period comets needed for a billions of years solar system. This is not a creationist claim. So this is not me just making a claim or making an assertion. We're substantiating it. This is openly admitted in the mainstream literature. And go have a look at the mainstream literature. And again, this is not even an argument. This is not a hill I would die on, okay? It's very interesting. It's fascinating. And it's even more fascinating that this is the best critics have to offer. Like, come on. If you want me to stop using the Comets argument, because again, as I've said, we've got 100 or more. Easy. Just in general, hundreds of good arguments. Okay. So if you want me to stop using the Comets argument, if you want creation to stop using the Comets argument, then at least provide some good counters. It's not like we need it. It's not a make or break thing. It's like, oh no, we can't use the Comets argument anymore. Young Earth is false. It's one of many. And it's, again, very interesting that this is the best that the critics have to offer. Why the Kuiper Belt cannot save deep time. The Kuiper Belt contains far too few objects by orders of magnitude to supply what the theory demands. The objects are far too large to be comet seeds. The belt is not dynamically consistent with producing the needed influx rate. Prove me wrong, SciManDan. Go point by point. Prove me wrong. Secular astronomers admit the Kuiper Belt population is 1 in 100 to 1 in 1,000 of what their models require. The Kuiper Belt is real, yes, unlike the Oort cloud, but it's not made of comets. It contains the wrong types of objects in the wrong quantities with the wrong composition, the wrong dynamics. Sorry, SciManDan. As I said in the beginning of this video, SciManDan tried to refute my comet argument. It didn't go well, as we can see. So I said it didn't go well. So I was claiming it didn't go well. I was asserting it didn't go well. Now I'm proving my claim at the beginning that Dan's response to my Comet argument didn't go well. We can see that. We're exposing his rescue devices. The Oort Cloud, again, conclusion, has never been observed. Not a single. See, SciManDan made this very easy for me. And the subsequent topics like magnetic field decay, preserved biomaterial in dinosaur fossils, soft tissue, for example, it doesn't get any better for SciManDan. All of his arguments are just as easy to debunk, which means those pieces of evidence that I provided in that video, which was a clip from a larger biblical creation seminar, they still stand. They hold up under scrutiny. And exists only because long-age cosmology can't explain why comets are still here. That's a textbook rescue device. Well, good job. You get an A+ SciManDan for invoking and utilizing a textbook rescue device. Next time, SciManDan should hold up his college textbook titled Evolutionist Rescue Devices, because clearly he's got a PhD in invoking very unconvincing rescue devices. Popular, but unconvincing. The Kuiper Belt is real, but it contains far too few objects. I want SciManDan to engage this. Don't be guilty of the 5 Ds of evolutionist dodgeball: dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Actually engage the data and the wrong types to resupply short period comets. In short, comets decay too fast for a billions of years solar system, but they fit perfectly within a young Earth time frame. No rescue devices, no far-fetched mental inventions. We can sit back, we can relax, we can have a sip of water, and we can know, and we can be confident that comets decay too fast. The young Earth model can account for them better than the billions of years paradigm. The deep time model needs invisible, unobserved reservoirs. The biblical model does not. SciManDan, if your model needs invisible clouds and missing mass to survive, you don't have evidence. You have a rescue device. When you remove the theoretical Oort Cloud, sorry, Dan, we're taking that away from you, my friend, and the insufficient Kuiper Belt, taking that too. Sorry, Dan. You know what? Christmas time's coming up. So if you can respond and actually provide a convincing, worthwhile, sophisticated, well thought out, something that's not just a claim or assertion, if you can provide a good response or good reasons for why the Comets argument is bad and why it's been debunked, Christmas is just around the corner, December 25th. I'll give you the Oort Cloud and the Kuiper Belt back. No, you know what? Oort Cloud, you're never getting that back. It's completely imagined. Pure evolutionary philosophy. Kuiper Belt, you might get that back for Christmas. Comets are not old. They are rapidly decaying objects that fit perfectly within a young creation. When the Kuiper Belt is too small and the Oort Cloud is invisible, the deep time model collapses. SciManDan made this too fun and he made this too easy, but we still love him. That's why we love him, because he gives us a lot of fun and he gives us easy rebuttals. Secular scientists openly admit that these reservoirs don't work, but they need them anyway because they're not going to tap out, because they're so invested in believing that they're related to banana plants and strawberries, and they require billions of years for that to be true, for that fairy tale to be true, because you can't take a fish to fisherman, you can't take goo to you, you can't take bacteria-like organisms into biologists over thousands of years. No, you require billions of years, which is why when you limit the age of the Earth based on these incredible pieces of scientific evidence, like comets, like the decaying magnetic field, like T14 and diamonds, coal, and fossils, you take away their God, their lowercase g God, time. Without time, you're not getting goo to you. You need lots of time. So when you take away time, you also refute large-scale evolution. You refute the billions of years paradigm and large-scale evolution with it. That's not evidence. That's a rescue device. Here's the reality, guys. We're going to wrap up now. This video could actually act as a go-to video on comets, because the Comets argument has been tested. It's been tried. Comets are on trial here today, ladies and gentlemen. And as we can see, it has not been falsified or refuted. Short period comets are rapidly decaying objects with lifespans far shorter than millions of years. Even SciManDan admitted at the beginning that individual comets can't last long, but my rescue devices, well, your rescue devices don't work. Secular models acknowledge that the Kuiper Belt cannot supply enough new comets and that the Oort Cloud has never been observed. You know what's funny? Even if his arguments were true, even if the solar system were billions of years old, he still hasn't demonstrated it scientifically. Like, even if it were true, his arguments don't work. He needs something better than the Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud. That's what's really interesting about this. The continued existence of short period comets is consistent with a young solar system and remains an unresolved problem for deep time cosmology. And so that's it. I can't wait for the session here on dinosaur soft tissue. There's a sneak preview for you. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's about it. That is our refutation of SciManDan, part 1, the comet problem he can't solve. And so stay tuned for the next several parts where we're going to take apart SciManDan's video point by point. He also put out a video a little while ago on the helium and zircon issue, where he responded to a video I put out with Michael J. Ord. But he actually uses the same arguments in here on helium and zircon crystals. So that way we can debunk the other video he put out, because he uses the same arguments, but he summarizes them in this one. But we can do it through this video. So that'll help us to leave no stone unturned. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in, and Standing for Truth is signing out.